Jared, talking about taxing wealth over work, can you explain why there's no carried interest, an issue that the Democrats have talked about for a very, very long time as being a loophole? I've talked about it on this show. Is not part of this in any real meaningful way?
So I think that as we've negotiated the tax deal, some things have fallen out, some things have come in. I mean, there are things now in the plan that are highly progressive. You're talking about surtax on incomes above $5 million. We're talking about higher capital gains tax rates. For example, the president's idea around stepping up the basis, that's something that he's pushed very hard for, an extremely progressive policy that directly
Jared, I'm not asking you
for
Jared, I'm not.
And so these
pushing
are the things
more
that have come
progressive
in.
policies. I don't think. I think some progressive policies, frankly, are quite too progressive. I would argue, looking at this tax proposal, it actually taxes wages or wage earners more than it actually really taxes wealth.
No, I don't think that's right. Now, first of all, what I was getting to is some things have come in, some things have fallen out. Carried interest is something, obviously, the president has talked about closing that loophole, and it's come out of the negotiations as far as I know, but it could go back in. But wait a second, let me just make I have to tell you one thing.
I beg you.
These taxes hit nobody under $400,000. Nobody under $400,000 AGI, so I don't get where your wage comment comes from.
But all the billionaires get off scot-free again. After all the talk and all the Elizabeth Warrens and all these nasty billionaires, they get off scot-free.
Yeah, that's just flat wrong. I mean, once you're taxing capital gains at a higher rate, how can you possibly sit there and tell me? How can you possibly tell me?
So you're talking about they take a loan against the appreciated shares.
So now you're talking about So now you're talking about unrealized gains, and I understand that, and that's something the president has recently leaned into. Correct. So the president has said that should be on the table too. But don't tell me that these progressive tax measures are not reaching millionaires and billionaires. In fact, that's exclusively who they're reaching. And the scores are very explicit on this. The vast majority. Look, the compliance measures we've talked about, ramping up the compliance measures, 23% of tax compliance evasion is the top 1%. So that's
Jared,
who it
the
hits.
reason I'm harping on the carried interest, and we've known each other a very long time, so I'm just hoping you can explain it to the public. This is like such a glaring, privileged position for a certain group of people over just about everybody else. It's not something that's necessarily going to raise a fortune, but for those who look at the tax policy as part of a democracy where people have to believe in it, and they say, this just makes no sense. It's just like an irrational, illogical thing.
You make a good point.
Explain the rationality and logic of how that could, quote unquote, just come out. Who is in whose pocket? Who is sleeping with who? What is happening that this is conversation, that we're even having this conversation?
Okay, so give me a chance to respond, please. No filibustering. The point that you're making is a completely coherent and credible point. This is a loophole that absolutely should be closed. But as you well know, when you go up to Capitol Hill and you start negotiating on taxes, there are more lobbyists in this town on taxes than there are members of Congress. The question you have to ask yourself is not only what fell out. It's a reasonable question, and you're making good arguments, not just what fell out, and it shouldn't have fallen out, but what is in. Is this truly a progressive tax plan that hits only taxpayers above $400,000, that taxes wealth over work, that holds harmless the bottom 98% of the tax-paying public? And the answer is absolutely yes. So if you're collecting literally trillions in tax revenue from the top 1% and 2%, the idea that you're not hitting millionaires and billionaires is just, kind of
I just don't understand
objectively false. I mean, of course you're hitting millionaires and billionaires.
Though?
It's objectively false.
How are these lobbyists? How is somehow private equity more powerful than any other industry in America?
Well, look, I mean, that's a fair question. But then again, if you look at the tax measures that we've passed, we have beat these lobbyists on so many of them when it comes to raising taxes on the wealthy, on financing tax cuts for the middle class, by taxing wealth over work, by going after tax evasion by the top 1%, of which 23% of it comes from that narrow niche. Of course we're hitting the wealthy. You're picking out one piece that fell out, and I agree with you. It should be in there. But you're ignoring the trillions of dollars of revenue increases on the top 2% that are still in there.